You might want to hold your breath for this one. Because what you're about to hear will change the way you've seen Wang Yibo and Xiao Zhan forever. Before we dive into this shocking revelation, make sure you hit that subscribe button and turn on notifications, because what's coming next in this series will leave you speechless. For years, fans have speculated, whispered, and created endless theories about what truly goes on behind the curtain between these two C-drama icons. From their unforgettable on-screen chemistry to the countless off-camera moments that seem too genuine to be scripted, people have always felt that there was something deeper, something hidden. But now, after years of silence, the truth has begun to surface, and it's more emotional, more intense, and more human than anyone ever imagined. It all started on a quiet night in Shanghai during a major industry gala. The cameras had gone off, the lights had dimmed, and most celebrities had already left. But someone stayed behind. A faint conversation echoed down the marble hall, a voice that trembled not with anger but with exhaustion. It was Xiao Zhan. Across from him stood Wang Yibo, head lowered, hands in his pockets. Witnesses said they seemed lost in a conversation that stretched for nearly an hour, one filled with emotions too complex to define. People who were nearby later said the two didn't argue, didn't shout. Instead, there was a kind of silence between them, the kind that holds years of unspoken stories. That was the moment many realized, their connection wasn't just about fame or drama. It was about something they had carried through the years, quietly, without needing the world's validation. The truth began to unravel when an old interview clip resurfaced, one that fans had long forgotten. In it, a reporter asked Wang Yibo about Xiao Zhan's greatest strength. Instead of giving a standard answer, Yibo paused. For a long moment, he didn't speak, then finally said with a quiet smile, "He never gives up on people." It seemed ordinary at the time, but now that the pieces are coming together, fans believe that line carried a weight no one understood back then. Over the years, their paths diverged. Xiao Zhan took on deeper, emotionally charged roles, while Yibo's career became a whirlwind of projects, endorsements, and music. Yet, no matter how far apart their schedules pulled them, something invisible kept bringing their names back together. It wasn't coincidence. It was history, connection, and loyalty, hidden beneath fame's blinding lights. A close associate recently revealed something that shook fans even more. During one of their hardest years, the one that tested both of their careers, they often met in secret. Not to plan new shows, not to discuss projects, but to simply talk. To keep each other steady when the noise outside became too much. Those late-night meetings weren't about publicity. They were about survival. About holding on to someone who understood the storm because he had weathered it too. There's one story that particularly stood out. During an award event that Xiao Zhan attended alone, Wang Yibo was reportedly abroad. Fans noticed that Xiao Zhan wore a particular bracelet, simple, dark, and subtle. A year later, during one of Yibo's concerts, that same design appeared on his wrist. It was a quiet message, hidden in plain sight. A sign that no matter what the headlines said, their story was still being written between the lines. Fast forward to today, and it seems the weight of years finally reached its breaking point. Sources close to both stars confirmed that they recently met for the first time in months. The meeting wasn't scheduled, and no media was supposed to know about it. But someone overheard what might have been the most heartfelt conversation of their friendship. Xiao Zhan reportedly said, "After everything, I'm glad we didn't give up on each other." To which Wang Yibo quietly replied, "We were never supposed to." It wasn't about drama, competition, or fame anymore. It was about two people who had been through storms, who had seen the best and worst of the industry, and somehow still managed to keep a part of themselves untouched by it all. Their secret wasn't scandalous, wasn't dark, it was human. It was about loyalty, friendship, and endurance in a world where those things are often forgotten. Fans across the world have begun revisiting old clips, interviews, and behind-the-scenes moments, realizing that maybe they had been witnessing fragments of this truth all along. The shared glances, the quiet smiles, the unspoken understanding, they were all signs of a story far deeper than anyone dared to believe. Now, both stars stand at new points in their careers. Stronger, wiser, and more grounded. But the memory of what they endured together still lingers like a quiet song in the background. It's not about rekindling old moments or rewriting history. It's about honoring what was real when everything else was performance. And maybe that's why fans around the world are not just shocked, they're moved. Because the secret they were hiding all these years wasn't something to be ashamed of. It was something beautiful. Something honest. Something that reminded everyone watching that behind the glamour, behind the flashing lights and scripted lines, there are still people capable of loyalty, forgiveness, and quiet strength. So next time you see Wang Yibo and Xiao Zhan share a smile on camera, remember this. There's a story there. A story of survival, trust, and silent understanding. And it's one they've carried in their hearts long before the world started watching. If you made it this far, you can probably feel it too, that quiet emotion behind their eyes that says they've lived through more than they'll ever say. The studio lights dimmed that evening, but neither of them moved. Wang Yibo stood by the door, silent, his hand still gripping the edge of the frame. Xiao Zhan sat on the couch, his eyes reflecting something deeper than exhaustion. There was a quiet tension that wrapped around the air, thick and unmoving. The kind of silence that holds 1,000 words no one dares to say. Years had passed since their first project together, yet every unspoken memory still lingered like a shadow that refused to fade. The cameras had stopped rolling, but their story had never truly ended. Fans had guessed, journalists had speculated, but the truth was far more fragile than anyone could ever imagine. Yibo finally spoke, his voice low and steady. He asked if Xiao Zhan ever regretted it. The silence stretched again, broken only by the faint hum of the air conditioner. Xiao Zhan turned, his eyes tired but honest. He said he never regretted the bond they shared, but he regretted the years they had to pretend it never existed. The confession was quiet, but it hit like thunder. They had once promised to protect each other no matter what came their way. Fame was supposed to be their dream, not their cage. But as the spotlight grew brighter, it only made the distance between them more visible. Every scene they filmed together became heavier with meaning. Every interview they gave had words carefully chosen to hide what their eyes had already said. There was a night, long ago, when Yibo had almost given up. The pressure, the rumors, the endless expectations. He had disappeared for 3 days, leaving behind a world that refused to understand him. Xiao Zhan was the only one who found him, sitting by the river, lost in silence. That night, they made a promise, to stand by each other even when the world turned away. But time changes people. Fame changes hearts. And silence becomes its own kind of prison. As the years went by, the secret they carried grew heavier. They buried it beneath smiles, scripts, and staged interviews. But every time they met on set, every time their eyes met between takes, it was there, the weight of what they could never say aloud. Now, in that quiet studio room, everything they had buried was finally surfacing. Yibo's hands trembled as he reached for a small notebook from his jacket. It was old, worn, the edges fading from years of being carried everywhere. He placed it gently on the table between them. This, he whispered, was never supposed to be found. Inside the pages were words from their early days, promises, letters, small pieces of memory they had written to each other when fame was still a dream. Xiao Zhan opened the book, and his hands froze on one line written years ago. If the world ever turns its back on us, I'll still remember who you were before it all began. It was Yibo's handwriting. The moment felt endless. The air seemed to stop moving. Xiao Zhan closed his eyes, his voice breaking slightly as he said he had been waiting years to hear those words again. He confessed that even when they drifted apart, even when the world tried to pull them in different directions, he had never truly stopped believing in the version of them that started it all. Yibo looked up, his eyes glistening, his voice raw. He said he had spent too long hiding behind silence, afraid that if the truth came out, it would destroy everything they had built. But now, after all these years, he realized the silence had already taken more from them than any truth ever could. And so, he told him everything. About the letters he never sent, the apologies he rehearsed but never said, the moments he watched from afar, proud yet broken, knowing they were no longer standing side by side. He spoke of the guilt, the pressure, the unbearable fear of being misunderstood. Xiao Zhan listened, quietly, tears welling in his eyes. He didn't interrupt. He didn't move. He just sat there, taking it all in. When Yibo finally stopped talking, there was a long silence, the kind of silence that heals and hurts at the same time. Then Xiao Zhan reached across the table and placed his hand on Yibo's. He said it was never too late. That no matter how far they had drifted, some bonds were not meant to break. The world could judge, the headlines could twist, but the truth between them was theirs alone. Outside the studio, the rain began to fall softly. It wasn't dramatic. It wasn't loud. Just quiet, like the world itself had paused to listen. They sat together in that moment, not as celebrities, not as icons, but as two people who had finally stopped pretending. The cameras might never capture that scene, but it was the most real one they had ever shared. Later that night, Yibo posted a message online, simple, but powerful. He wrote, "Some stories don't end, they just find new beginnings." The fans didn't understand at first. The internet buzzed with theories and questions. But those who had followed their journey from the start knew exactly what he meant. It wasn't just a statement. It was a quiet truth finally set free. The following week, they appeared together again, side by side, not as actors bound by a script, but as two souls who had finally made peace with their past. The world saw smiles, laughter, and warmth. But behind those smiles was something even more powerful: forgiveness. They walked away from that chapter not as the same people they once were, but as men who had finally let go of the weight they carried for too long. And for the first time in years, both of them felt light again. If this story touched your heart, don't forget to hit subscribe and turn on notifications so you never miss our next emotional C-drama story. Every week, we bring you powerful tales of love, loss, and the truth behind the faces you see on screen. Your support keeps these stories alive. Stay tuned, because the next story will leave you speechless.